The ancient philosophy of coaching is actually a philosophy that has existed since ancient times, but it was not named coaching back then. In ancient times, many practices touched people's lives, but they were not called coaching. Over time, this process matured, the name changed, and it has reached us today. We often explain something similar in communication as well. For example, in Turkey, we started using the word communication from 1947 onwards. So was there no communication in Turkey before 1947? Of course there was. In fact, everywhere in the world, from the very first human, the very first living being up until today, there has always been some form of communication and a field or path related to communication. However, once it is given a name, or once its concept and meaning become known, certain changes occur. For example, if you ask what examples there are of this, when you go back to around 300 BC, you can see that Stoicism was actually conducting the first coaching practices. So it goes all the way back to 300 BC. In fact, it has such an ancient history. And if you ask whether it stops there, it doesn't. Of course, after that, it appears in many other different places as well. For example, at the core of many coaching tools we use today, there is always a Socratic structure. Socrates got a construction worker to solve a geometry problem just by asking coaching questions, and while having him solve this problem, he did not help him, did not guide him, and did not give examples. He simply used the knowledge within the worker. This means that the philosophy of coaching is truly ancient and is a philosophy that has come down to us from much earlier times. Later on in the following periods, we see the 3K method in Eastern countries, in the Far East, and for example in Korea, again in history, self-coaching. In fact, one of the foundations of coaching is first coaching yourself. It won't be very easy for you to touch someone else's life without first coaching yourself. We often see something similar with managers. He can't even manage his own life, yet he's here trying to be a manager for us. You've probably heard this phrase many times. If you are exemplary, competent, and trustworthy in this area, people will already be eager to receive coaching from you and will express this desire. If you ask what else there is in our culture, we also have a lot of shamans. You know, the shaman philosophy. We often hear stories of leadership and spiritual leadership from shaman philosophy. And then, as a continuation of the shaman tradition in Anatolia, there are also the Native Americans, whom they even say we are related to, and their philosophy also contains a lot of this. They ask you to put yourself in the other person's shoes and walk in them for at least 15 days. In other words, it actually makes you question empathy. And within the philosophy of coaching, we are currently using all of these actively. For example, in our own culture, the closest example we remember from history is the companionship that Shams provided to Rumi, which is what made Rumi who he is today. And even today, we still use Shams's questions related to the philosophy of coaching and coaching practices. When we need to use very different perspectives or very different emotions, we can turn to these. So if you ask how the word coach came to be called coach from ancient culture to today, in Central Europe, again in very old times, there was a village near Budapest called Kocsi, and in this village there was a vehicle used for transportation. And the section at the back of this vehicle is given a name. It's called Kocsi, meaning it's used in the sense of carrier. Isn't that exactly what coaching does today? Isn't what we want to be taken from one place to another and to be able to continue this journey in a healthy and much more professional way? So the fact that it's called Kocsi, that it takes you from one place to another, and that this process is managed professionally is exactly why we call it coaching. Then, over time, these became more academic, scientific, and more tangible, concrete forms, transforming into a coaching system that started first in England and America, and then spread all over the world, reaching the present day. And within this coaching system, let's see whom you will take from where to where.